This FBI agent, Peter Strzok, who is now at the center of a new investigation, was on the ground floor of the Clinton email counterintelligence referral from the Intelligence Community Inspector General to the FBI in 2015 after highly classified information passed through Clinton's unsecured server used exclusively for government business. And according to a lengthy New York Times profile on FBI Director James Comey just 2 weeks before he was fired, a profile done with the full cooperation of the FBI media office, this FBI agent Strzok was central to discussions about intent and whether to prosecute Clinton under the gross negligence statute, though intent is not required. He was also a key player in drafting of the July statement by Director Comey that recommended against criminal charges, now referred to as the exoneration statement. And he was in the lead on the review of classified emails found on Anthony Weiner's computer that belonged to his estranged wife and Clinton aide Huma Abedin. This review reopened and closed the Clinton email case just days before the election. The fired FBI director took issue with the president's statement, saying in a tweet that he wants the American public to know the FBI is honest, strong, and independent. This morning, a senior presidential advisor to Mr. Trump said he is on solid ground.
This revelation that a decidedly, definitively anti-Trump FBI investigator was involved in the Hillary Clinton interviews, as the president says, is now starting to make a lot of sense. It's very frustrating to many law-abiding Americans who look up and always see a double standard, always see special exceptions for Hillary Clinton.
Comey and his old boss, the Attorney General Loretta Lynch, are also the subject of a Justice Department Inspector General investigation for their actions during the Clinton email case and how it was handled, specifically with Comey going outside the chain of command with that statement in July of last year. Sandra.
And Catherine, are we seeing strong congressional reaction to all of this?
Well, in the Sunday talk shows, a senior Republican Senator Lindsey Graham cautioned the president against speaking out too heavily.
I would just say this to the president. There's an ongoing criminal investigation. Comey may be part of it. You tweet and comment regarding ongoing criminal investigations at your own peril. I'd be careful if I were you, Mr. President. I'd watch this.
And with the big development Friday that former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn has pled guilty to lying to the FBI. That's a violation of 18 U.S.C. 1001 over his conversations with the Russian ambassador, and a plea agreement that stipulates full cooperation in the possible prosecution of other individuals. A senior Senate Democrat is predicting more fallout for the White House. Sandra.
An FBI probe begun to find corruption in government may simply have exposed corruption within the FBI itself. In the last few days, we have learned a great deal about a man called Peter Strzok. Until recently, Strzok was deputy head of counterintelligence at the FBI. For the past 2 years, he was central to investigations into both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Last summer, Strzok was abruptly pulled off Robert Mueller's team of investigators. This didn't become public for months, but it happened. The FBI won't explain why it happened, even when asked directly by the Congress. Now we know it happened because Strzok was sending highly political text messages to his mistress, who also worked at the FBI, messages praising Hillary Clinton and denigrating Donald Trump. Now, why does this matter exactly? Well, because everything about Peter Strzok's job was essentially political. Strzok was the man who signed off on starting the current Russia investigation, the one that has totally overtaken the federal government. Strzok was also the official who altered James Comey's statement to avoid criminally implicating Hillary Clinton in her now famous server investigation. In other words, Strzok's political opinions mattered. In fact, they may have changed American history. And to illustrate it, consider this. Consider how Agent Strzok handled 2 different series of interviews in criminal investigations. According to a new piece by Chuck Ross of the Daily Caller, Strzok was the agent who personally interviewed Hillary Clinton's top aides, Cheryl Mills and Huma Abedin, during the server investigation. Government notes from those interviews show that Abedin told the FBI she had no idea that Hillary Clinton was maintaining a private email server, in fact, only learned about it in the media. Mills, for her part, went even further than that. She claimed that not only did she not know about Hillary's server, she had no clue what an email server was. Here's the problem. It looks like both Mills and Abedin lied. In a 2010 email to Abedin, Cheryl Mills wrote this, quote, "HRC email coming back, is server okay," end quote. So it turns out Cheryl Mills knew exactly what a server was. A year later, Bill Clinton aide Justin Cooper emailed Huma Abedin to say he had shut down Hillary's server in response to a hacking attempt. Cooper also explicitly told the FBI in his own interview that he'd discussed Clinton's email server with Houman Abedin in 2009 while that server was being set up. Any reasonable person would conclude that both Mills and Abedin were lying baldly when they told the FBI they knew nothing about Clinton's email server. Lying to the FBI, as we've all just been reminded, is a felony. Yet neither Mills nor Abedin was charged or prosecuted for that. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn must be looking on at all this in bewilderment. Agent Strzok, it turns out, interviewed him too. But unlike Hillary Clinton's aides, Michael Flynn didn't get a pass. Flynn just pled guilty to a serious federal crime. His life has been destroyed. He's had to sell his house to pay his legal bills. 2 cases, same crime, wildly different outcomes. What do the 2 have in common? Well, one highly political FBI agent. All of this raises the question, what other cases has Agent Strzok influenced in recent years? The public has a right to know the answer to that immediately. The FBI belongs to voters, not to Peter Strzok and his friends. The FBI doesn't see it that way, of course. From their perspective, you've got a right to shut up and do what you're told. And by the way, you'll stop asking so many questions if you know what's good for you. This is exactly how the secret police start, when law enforcement agencies decide to do the bidding of politicians rather than pursue impartial justice on behalf of the public. We ought to nip this nightmare in the bud right now. Dan Bongino is a former NYPD officer, and he joins us tonight. So, Dan, obviously, most Americans don't want to think badly of the FBI or to suspect that politics are behind key decisions in investigations. Sure. But I am sincerely baffled as to how Houman Abedin and Cheryl Mills could apparently lie in their interviews to the FBI and escape any kind of penalty, and Michael Flynn lies and pleads to a felony charge. How can that be?
Because, Tucker, this is the weaponization of your government and mine. You know, as a former federal agent and someone who worked inside the White House, if you're not scared of your government tonight, this case should at least tickle you a little bit and wake you up. Donald Trump's crime, make no mistake at this point, was winning this presidential election. Tucker, let's walk through just quickly how this started. This was all based on a crime, and I'm using the dreaded air quotes here, of a violation of the Logan Act. An act that has never been successfully prosecuted in the history of the constitutional republic, which says that private citizens can't negotiate with foreign governments. Really? Why isn't Jimmy Carter in jail for going to visit the Palestinians? Why isn't Jesse Jackson in jail for going to North Korea? The answer is because nobody took it seriously.
Or Barack Obama, who's abroad negotiating global warming agreements in effect all the time, or Bill Clinton, or any former president, you know, including Ronald Reagan. I mean, you're right. It's ridiculous.
Obama, who was just overseas doing that, by the way. This, and who started this whole thing with the Logan Act, according to multiple reports I've seen out there now? Sally Yates, who then used the premise of violating the Logan Act, a largely fictitious crime no one's ever been prosecuted with, used that as a premise to go to the White House and say, well, Mike Flynn is now subjected, could potentially be bribed because he violated a crime no one's ever been prosecuted for. Tucker, this is a frightening case. And then double that down with Andrew Weissman and Jim Comey. Jim Comey, who acknowledged starting the special counsel after he was fired by leaking sensitive data to the press. This case stinks. It's a scam, it's a sham, and it should scare every American, regardless of your political stripes.
So I guess what confuses me is the lack of oversight. For whatever reason, and honestly, I'm confused by it, the executive branch, the White House, and the leadership of the DOJ haven't done a lot to rein them in. But the Congress also has oversight over the FBI. And it's not clear to me why FBI officials who refuse to answer basic questions like what's in Strzok's texts, why they're not being held in contempt of Congress.
Yeah, what's doubly frightening about this, Tucker, is they're stonewalling on congressional requests for information, and they're looking at potentially by Devin Nunes being held in contempt of court. Think about what we're talking about here, Tucker. The branch of government most intimately related to the people, the House of Representatives, elected every 2 years. They represent the smallest number of people at the federal level. These are the accountable entities. They have said, the representatives of the people, the FBI, give us this information now. There is something going on, and we demand as representatives of people to know it. And the FBI, not a knock on the men and women, I'll be crystal clear, they're wonderful. I've worked with them. They're great. FBI management, someone there who's been infected with the political bug, has said, nah, we're just not going to abide by that. I mean, what are you operating, a shadow government? Are you serious? Congress has demanded answers and you're just saying, no, we're not going to do it?
I don't understand why everyone seems so passive in the face of this. I mean, this is a perversion, one of the institutions that most Americans respect and want to respect, the FBI, but also it's the most powerful federal agency. I mean, they can destroy your life in an afternoon. Why is no one stepping forward to rein them in?
You know, that's a great point, Tucker. I mean, if you're a Democrat in Congress watching this show right now, I know we've got them. Aren't you worried? The government is so powerful right now that the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, the president, can do nothing to stop this investigation, this sham investigation from coming after him. If you're a Democrat, aren't you a little worried right now that may boomerang back on you? Conservatives have been worried about this for years. It's time for liberals to wake up and shut this disaster down. This is a political witch hunt at its worst. It's an international disgrace right now, what's going on. We're being embarrassed on the global stage. This is not an investigation. This is a scam.
Liberals used to worry about things like that before they took power. Now they just benefit from them. Dan, thanks very much for that.
Yes, sir.
Peter Strzok, not the only political concern for Mueller's team, as you just heard Dan allude. Newly released emails show that a man called Andrew Weissmann, who's Mueller's deputy on the Russia probe, praised acting Attorney General Sally Yates for refusing to defend President Trump's travel ban. Using his work email, Weissmann sent Yates an email after Trump fired her saying, and I'm quoting, "I am so proud and in awe. Thank you so much. All my deepest respects." In other words, Weissmann despises Trump so much that he supports politically motivated bureaucratic defiance of the president. Nevertheless, he remains on Mueller's team, and it raises a bunch of obvious questions about the fairness of this process. Britt Hume is Fox's senior political analyst, and he joins us now. Britt, I don't think, I've held back for months now criticizing the Mueller investigation because I want it to be on the level, and I think Americans have a right to believe that justice can be done in this country. And so there have been all these stories about the number of Mueller deputies who were big Democratic donors, ignored them. But at some point, you got to wonder, how could a team comprised almost exclusively of people who hate the subject of the investigation conduct an impartial investigation, a fair one?
I think that's the question, Tucker, and it's one that I've been asking myself in the last several days, given what we learned about Mr. Strzok and now Mr. Andrew Weissmann. And, you know, first of all, I don't like special counsel investigations or special prosecutors or independent counsel or any of the lot. I think it's always and everywhere a terrible idea because it sets up what amounts to an unaccountable unit using the Justice Department resources, but really as a practical matter outside the Justice Department's control. And it creates a situation in which a prosecutor appointed to do an investigation feels that he is called upon or she is called upon to prosecute. So it creates, I think, a bias in favor of action, even where none may be warranted. And it's been only a handful of these appointed special prosecutors who've ever backed off and said nothing to see here. So I think that's a problem. Now you enter into it this possibility that important figures within the investigation may be harboring serious bias against the subject of the investigation, and I think you have a problem that is made even worse. This Weissmann thing particularly bothers me. After all, what was in stake here, Tucker, was an order that was issued by the president, controversial though it was. I don't think it was good policy, but I think he had the legal right to do it, and I think the Supreme Court has signaled in recent days and before that it also thinks he had the legal right to do it. And here was the acting Attorney General in the Justice Department saying, I'm not going to support you in this. I'm not going to make the case for what you've done here. That is a dereliction of duty. She was fired for it. She should have been fired for it. It was a huge grandstand play. She was widely applauded on the left for doing that. But and for this Weissmann guy to weigh in with this cringingly this email, this suck-up email to her, raises, I think, serious questions about his impartiality, whether he can be impartial. So I think we have some serious questions on the table here, no question about it.
So the basic question is, does this have anything to do with collusion with Russia and Russia's effect on the 2016 election outcome, which was, as you know, the original pretext for the investigation that seems to have been abandoned? Nobody seems to have noticed its disappearance. Will this investigation wind up, in the end, bearing directly on the question of Russian involvement in the 2016 election?
My guess is it will. Remember, Tucker, this investigation, which Mueller took over, started under Comey, way back in 2016 and was a counterintelligence investigation. That is to say, it was an investigation by the FBI acting as an intelligence agency to determine the extent of Russia's efforts to penetrate and influence the election. And it was not, at that time, thought to be or to be a criminal investigation. And in the course of that, you'll remember, Tucker, we now know that James Comey told the president, told now President, then candidate Trump, that he was not the subject of the investigation, or a subject of the investigation. Now we have progressed to the point where it's taken over by Mueller, and in his charge, the question of any collaboration between the Trump campaign and the Russians is certainly part of it, but it's not all there is to it. So at some point, we're going to get, I think, from Mueller's team, a report on what the Russian side did, what they tried to do. And we will find out, presumably in the course of that, whether they think there was some kind of collaboration between the Trump camp and the Russians that had some significant effect on the election. I continue to hold out hope that in the end, Mueller, a man of considerable reputation, will have the integrity, if he finds nothing really worthy of prosecution, to say so. But I'm getting less confident of that by the day, I'm afraid.
I am too. I don't want to feel that way, but the evidence is mounting. Brit Hume, thank you.